Well, the Transportation Safety Board has released its preliminary findings into what happened when the Delta Airlines plane crash landed at Pearson last month. Well, the report says when the plane touched down, the side stay attacked to the aircraft's right main landing gear fractured. Well, the landing gear retracted and the wing root fractured between the landing gear and the fuselage. Officials say a left-wing explosion happened outside the aircraft, but the cause hasn't been determined. The preliminary reports finds no obvious pre-existing malfunctions in the aircraft's flight control were noted, but further analysis is expected. Investigators used a simulator to conduct several approaches and landings, allowing them to recreate the conditions of the crash and gain insights on the sequence of events. Among the factors that are still being investigated are wing structure, certification of landing gear and wing structure, landing techniques and hard landings, and pilot training. Well, the safety board says the probe is far from over. And for more on the findings, we're joined live by aviation expert Phyl Durdey. Always appreciate speaking with you, Phil. Based on what you've seen so far from these preliminary reports, what stands out to you?
Yeah, good morning, Jamie. Thanks for having me. Well, everything was normal right up until about the 150-foot mark. A pilot flying was the first officer. Everything was going normally. Looking at the transcripts and the information that's provided, they were on glide slope, which is about 700 feet per minute, which is totally normal. And then approximately at 150 feet, the pilot flying was pulling back on the power, and the descent rate increased up to 1,114 feet per minute, which is really significant. So they were really approaching the ground at a very rapid rate. The ground proximity warning called out 50 feet, which is totally normal, but then the aircraft was still doing about 1,100 feet per minute in the descent. Now, when it hit the ground, it was doing just under 1,100 feet per minute, which is about 18.3 feet per second. The landing gear itself is designed to absorb an impact of 720 feet per minute, or about 12.3 feet per second. So they were really coming down at the ground. With Endeavour Air, their classification of a hard landing is anything over 600 feet per minute. So like I said, when they impacted the ground, it was way beyond the structural limits of the aircraft.
As the report said, it's far from over. But I'm curious, based on what you've seen and based on what you just told us, does some of this kind of lead your attention to pilot error? What's your take on that?
Well, the thing was that the descent rate wasn't adjusted. There was a fluctuation in speed because of the winds at the time that were gusting up to 35 knots. So there was a bit of a fluctuation in speed. But the question remains is why there was such a high rate of descent. Usually at about the 100 feet mark, where it's starting to pull back, the 150 feet, they're pulling back on the power, also starting to level out the aircraft to reduce the descent rate. But that didn't happen. The descent rate actually increased. So it begs to wonder what was going on in the cockpit.
What kind of, I guess, in terms of interrogation or just reports and interviews with these pilots and the crew would be going on behind closed doors? What are they trying to get to the bottom of when it comes to the decisions that those pilots made as they were descending?
Well, they'll be listening. First of all, they'll be listening to the cockpit voice recorder to see what the conversation was in the cockpit, and then they'll be interviewing each of the pilots individually. Another one of the things that came to light in the report was that at 50 feet, the ground proximity warning system called out a high rate of descent. So in the cockpit, there's a call out. It goes sink rate, which means that they're descending way too fast. They should have powered up and gone around, but I think at 50 feet, it was a bit too late.
I'm just curious overall, Phil. We've had several major incidents regarding the aviation sector as of recent. What does this kind of, when you see these kind of things pop up, talk about the emphasis on kind of every company, every airline going back to their drawing board and making sure that all protocols are being followed, that the pilots are the best of the best, that they're there based on merit. What's your take on just the overall, the industry and the airlines on how they reassess and, what's going on in their industry, given some of these horrific incidents?
Well, the industry has never been safer than it is today. The pilots are trained to an outstanding standard. They have to have the proficiency. The captain had, I think it was 760 hours on type. The first officer had 418 hours on type, so they were experienced with that aircraft. The rigorous training that the North American pilots are put through, or worldwide pilots are put through, with the simulators and the training, it's outstanding, the amount of training that they get. So it's to say that you can put your finger on an exact cause of why all these accidents are happening, and it's not like there's a horrific amount, but when something like this happens, it does bring it to the forefront.
Absolutely. Aviation expert Phyl Durdey, thanks for the chat. Appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks, Jamie.